Welcome to the Stochastic MLB Strategy and Live Before Lock show. Once again, we have lock coming up in an hour, so we'll jump right into the games today. Of course, this was originally a 6-game day slate. Now we have a 4-game day slate after a couple of postponements. So only 4 games to talk about here. It should be an interesting slate to look at with only 4 games on the board. Kind of an interesting one. It is our first Coors slate as well, which I don't always love Coors slates. I really don't love it when we have Coors on a 4-game slate where we don't have a ton of great options to pivot to, but we'll figure it out. We'll talk about it. We'll look at all the different options here. I'm sure we'll find some little places that we can find to get different, but let's jump right into it. We'll start with, I thought it worked well yesterday looking at the pitchers. So we'll start looking at the top pitchers tool. By the way, please do, if you have not yet, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. All right, let's jump into it. This show, by the way, is sponsored by Bet365. We have a great deal for users in just 4 states. In 4 states, we have a can't miss deal, and then it's not eligible for anybody outside of those states. But if you're in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia, you're going to want to take advantage of our Bet365 offer. It is, of course, in the description of this video. You bet $1, you can turn it into $200. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but that's pretty much all it is. It's very simple. If you live in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia, you got to take advantage of that offer. It's as good of an offer as you are ever going to find anywhere. So highly recommend taking advantage of the Bet365 deal. And of course, we'll be looking at our tools here. We also have the 9 for $9 offer going on right now, which I believe expires tomorrow. So you kind of, if you want to take advantage of this 9 days for $9 at Stochastic, you're going to need to take advantage of it today. It's not going to be around tomorrow. I did not add any notes to my documents there. I was meaning to add a few notes there. I did not do so, but yeah, it expires tomorrow. 9 for $9, and the promo code for that one is PLAYBALL. Also linked in the description. If you click the link, it will automatically put in that PLAYBALL promo code. But otherwise, yeah, just use promo code PLAYBALL. You can get access to all of our tools for 9 days for just $9. All of our MLB tools. So I do recommend taking advantage of that deal. All right, now let's jump into it. Look at some of our top pitchers on the slate. Kevin Gausman, the pretty clear top pitcher on the slate. Nice matchup with Kansas City, the best pitcher that we've got here. Ownership is going to be there. 62% projected ownership, 43% chance of being one of the top 2 pitchers on the slate. Hard to get away from Gausman too much. He's just he's the top pitcher on the slate. How many likes do we need to not wear a flannel tomorrow? Larry C doesn't want me. I got so much flack yesterday for not wearing a flannel, and now Larry C is telling me that he needs me to not wear a flannel. I don't know. Okay. But Kevin Gausman, yeah, he's the top pitcher on the slate. He's likely to put up a score that you want. It's pretty less likely to fail, I would say, than anybody else on the slate. The ownership is going to be there. There's slight negative leverage. not a big deal in MLB DFS. I'm generally okay with eating the chalk. I don't know exactly how much I'll end up with Kevin Gossman. Hopefully I can actually make lineups that I can use today and don't lose them like I did yesterday. But Gossman, top pitcher on the slate. Chris Sale, his velocity was back to his 2019, back to his vintage numbers in his last start. Now he gets a matchup with Detroit. Hard to really know what to expect from Chris Sale, but it is a great matchup. He is a formerly great pitcher who I'm still willing to take some shots on, and obviously so is the field here. 59% projected ownership for Chris Sale, 33% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I'd be, I think, more likely to get away from Chris Sale than Kevin Gossman, but I'm not going to get too far away from Chris Sale either. Obviously, it's a great spot, and he is one of the top, in terms of talent, one of the top pitchers on the board. Lance Lynn versus San Francisco. Matchup night not quite as great, a little bit more expensive than Chris Sale, but also looking like a great option. Project for 49% ownership, 33% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Again, I'm willing to eat that chalk. Alex Wood, kind of interesting. So going up against the White Sox, we'll talk about that a little bit. The matchup, he is our biggest ground ball pitcher on the slate, which I kind of think is not necessarily a reason to fade Alex Wood as much as it is a reason to maybe bump up the White Sox bats a little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit with all the pitching changes being favorable for batters who can just make contact, get some ground balls. I think that it's going to hurt ground ball pitchers, which also means it's going to help batters facing ground ball pitchers. So maybe the White Sox are some bats that get a little bit of a bump from the change in the rules. Spencer Turnbull actually was a pretty big ground ball pitcher last time he played, which was a few years ago. But he's just 5,900. You could get to some Turnbull if you really want to. 6% projected ownership, 18% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 31% chance of being a top 2 value. He's fine. Again, because he is a bit of a ground ball pitcher, I think I might play some Boston. Might be a little bit more interested in playing Boston because of the rule changes. And then we got, of course, Josiah Gray in Coors. Recipe for disaster for Josiah Gray. Gives up a lot of fly balls, and now he's in Coors. It's a tough spot. He's 6,200, obviously going to be not owned at all. His odds of success are higher, than his ownership. As you can see here, he actually looks pretty good in the top pitchers tool. Maybe I'll play a little bit. He's just 6,200. He can also rack up some strikeouts. So I think he's an interesting play. Very, very likely to fail, but he also has the upside to rack up some strikeouts and also some obvious leverage on the Colorado Rockies stacks. Jordan Lyles versus Toronto. Yeah, it's a tough matchup versus Toronto. I mean, you can't really expect that much from Jordan Lyles when he is pitching against Toronto. But again, you're gonna find some positive leverage on these pitchers towards the bottom just because they're getting such low ownership. There's going to be at least a little bit of positive leverage. And then, of course, Kyle Freeland here, also in Coors. Much better matchup going up against, not much better, but both of the teams batting in Coors Field are not great lineups, which is sort of interesting. It makes it, more easier to fade some Coors chalk when it's there if you've got bad bats there. But Kyle Freeland, not somebody who is a great strikeout pitcher, not somebody I want to play a lot of, but looking like he's going to be a little bit under-owned. So those are the pitchers. But yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. So my thinking here, and I'm worried a little bit about double counting, but I do think it's a little bit interesting, the idea that maybe we can target some bats, some stacks against more ground ball pitchers, just because literally every change that was made to the rules this offseason favors bats, particularly against ground ball pitchers, more so than like strikeout pitchers. Strikeout pitchers doesn't matter as much, that the bases are bigger. All the rules kind of hurt ground ball pitchers more than fly ball pitchers. I think it's more likely that, if you're a ground ball pitcher, you're going to give out, there are going to be a few more batters getting on base on close plays because of the differences in the rules. So I do think that with the rules helping, hurting ground ball pitchers more than fly ball pitchers, I'm a little bit more inclined to, particularly on short slates like this, experiment with, maybe the White Sox don't look like the best stack in the world, but maybe I am willing to play a little bit more White Sox because I think there's at least a little bit more upside there because Alex Wood does give up a lot of ground ball contact. Looking at the Major League leaderboard from last year in terms of ground ball percentage, Alex Wood down here at 18th gave up 48.2% ground balls, not nearly in the realm of Framber Valdez, Alex Cobb up here, but still, relative to the other pitchers on the slate, pretty extreme ground ball pitcher. But then, of course, we don't have Spencer Turnbull. This is just for last year. Spencer Turnbull was also a pretty significant ground ball pitcher the last full season he played. Chris Sale also had some ground ball pretty high ground ball percentage last time out. So maybe you can target them as well. But to me, the White Sox become the most interesting, particularly if you've got some speedy White Sox there that can maybe get on base, steal some bags. I think that they're going to look a little bit more interesting. I am worried about double counting. I often say these more nuanced things are factored into projections. They're factored into the lines for Vegas. So as a result, they are factored into projections. So I don't know that it's something you should really be factoring in all that much. But because it is early, I think there's some chance that they haven't completely accounted for the changes in the rules yet in the projections. So at least worth thinking about playing some of these other stacks here. I would prefer it if Neil and Aton did the podcast topless. Interesting. No flannel, nothing yet. Maybe one day. Maybe one day I'll do that. Larry C, can the Nats please post a lineup? Yeah, no kidding. What time does that game start? Yeah, it doesn't start until 4:10 Eastern, so we got some time. They probably won't post a lineup. They're just it's gonna be a big surprise. We're all gonna have to pivot. It's gonna be awful. You don't want that in MLB. All right, looking at the top. Let's look at the top stacks tool. So the top stacks, as you can see, Colorado, it's in Coors. They're going to get some ownership. We're projecting them for 24% ownership. Actually, positive leverage. You don't often find positive leverage in the top stacks tool in Coors games, but in this case, we do have a little bit of positive leverage here in the Rockies against Josiah Gray. 24% projected ownership, 25% chance to be in the top stack. Looking a little bit expensive with a 13% chance to be in the top value stack, but certainly playable here. I'll play some Rockies stacks or maybe secondary stacks. We'll see where it falls there. Washington, similarly, going to get some ownership there in Cools, projected for 24% ownership, 19% chance to be in the top stack, despite being in Coors. Playable, not my favorite stack on the board. Toronto, I'm bummed to see that Toronto's getting ownership. Clearly the best lineup on the slate. Going to have some interest in some Toronto stacks. So is the field. 22% ownership, 17% chance to be in the top stack. A little bit over-owned there. Boston again. So I think this is where it starts to get interesting with Spencer Turnbull previously being a pretty significant ground ball pitcher. Boston obviously being a very strong offense. I think I have some interest in Boston. I think I'm going to go overweight, and the tools already like Boston. So even if I am double counting, they look like a very solid offense here. So sign me up for some Red Sox stacks if they're going to be only 7.4% owned on a 4-game slate. I'm going to have interest there. San Francisco, looking a little bit under-owned. Lance Lynn does have some power issues. So, we can find some bats that maybe will excel here. Maybe you can full stack them. Maybe you can play some one-offs in San Francisco. But looking 6.4% ownership on the stack, 9% chance of being the top stack, 13% chance of being the top value stack. Some positive leverage there. Not a surprise with the high-owned stacks being really high-owned, that the rest are going to be positive leverage stacks. White Sox, again, I think this is a spot where, they don't look great in the tools, but I actually might be willing to play a little bit more of the White Sox because of Alex Wood's ground ball tendencies, hoping that they can get on base, maybe fluster him, knock him out of the game early. Alex Wood, clearly he's a good pitcher, but if the ground balls, if he is hitting ground balls and maybe they get a couple extra batters on base as a result of the new rules, it makes a big difference. It changes. Pitchers will get exhausted a little bit more if batters are getting on base. Maybe we get to the bullpen a little bit quicker, and of course the obvious, it's batters getting on base helps your stack. So I do think the White Sox are an interesting stack here, despite having a little bit of negative leverage here. Detroit against Chris Sale. I mean, we don't really know what to make of Chris Sale, so I think that's the best argument you can make for Detroit. Obviously not a strong lineup, but the fact that Chris Sale is getting up there in age, hasn't really pitched much recently. I think you can make a case for playing Detroit here. 3.6% projected ownership, 5.8% chance to be in the top stack, 13% chance to be in the top value stack. I should say I would be over the field if I were 150 maxing. I don't know how much I'm going to get to Detroit in my lineups, but there's a strong argument to be made for Detroit just because of the lack of ownership and the volatility in the matchup. We don't really know what to make of Chris Sale. Kansas City, probably the hardest stack for me to get to, even at 4.1% projected ownership. 4.4% chance to be in the top stack, 3.9% chance to be in the top value stack. On a 4-game slate, you don't necessarily need your stack to put up 10 runs. So I think you could certainly play some Kansas City. I don't think that I'm going to get to them I think I'm playing 25 lineups today. I don't think I'll get to Kansas City in my lineups. But if I were playing 150, I would probably be above the field in terms of Kansas City exposure, just because you typically you want to play some of these lower owned stacks, and especially on a 4-game slate, like you don't need Kansas City to completely rock Kevin Gossman necessarily. You just need to outperform the other stacks on the slate. So certainly worth considering playing Kansas City here as well. We can look at some of the top bats. We'll jump right into it, and we'll look position by position here. Yeah, so now these percentages obviously higher on a 4-game slate than they are on a full slate here. Yeah, Larry C, that's a good question. I've been thinking about that a lot. So he's Larry asking, on a short slate like today, do you do 1 or 2 batters versus the pitcher? I'm pretty sure. Okay, Terry says usually not with 4 games. I think on this slate I would maybe go to 1. I don't think I would go to more than 1 batter against my pitcher, but I think that today I'm going to set my batter versus pitcher to 1 on this slate. I think, I mean, we examined on a 2-game slate, still a lot of pros on a 2-game slate. We're not willing to play any batters against their pitchers. So maybe it's overboard to even play 1 against your pitcher, but on a 4-game slate, I mean, especially with those like the Giants, like would it be surprising to see Lance Lynn have a great game and then give up a home run or 2? And, you know, you don't necessarily, if 1 batter hits a home run, you don't necessarily need them, but on a shorter slate like today, like it's more likely that the bats are just not going to put up big scores. So I'd be willing to go to 1 batter versus pitcher here. All right, looking at catchers, we got Keibert Ruiz at the top in terms of odds being a top fantasy scorer. Elias Diaz number 2, so the 2 Coors catchers at the top of the list, and then of course Danny Jansen of the 3 chalkiest stacks have the highest odds, even at catcher, of putting up big scores. But then not far behind, Eric Haas. We got Salvador Perez looking pretty good here. So across the board, fairly even across the board, down to 6% up to 15%. I do sometimes on shorter slates, I'm a little bit more willing. So like on a large slate, I rarely do anything to our projections to get to more or less of players that I want, just because, you know, you got to trust the projections to some extent. On a shorter slate, I'm a little bit more willing, and I guess I should go back to catcher just because catcher I think is the best example here. You know, on a 4-game slate, you might get 7 catchers who put up, you know, under five or fewer fantasy points. So then a guy like Sebi Zavala, who, you know, doesn't have a great chance of being the highest scoring pitcher on the slate, you might not get to any of him if he doesn't project well enough. Like looking at the projections here, you might get to 0 of Sebi Zavala, but he could hit a home run. He might not even need to hit a home run. So if you just have to outscore the other 7 catchers on the board here. So I'm a little bit more inclined to mess with projections a little bit on a 4-game slate to get to some of the really low owned guys like Sebi Zavala, Jake Rogers, not projected for much ownership. There's some positive leverage here. Again, I usually don't do anything to mess with the projections in MLB in particular. Just, you know, trust the projections and mess with stacks. But on a 4-game slate, I'm a little bit more willing to, just because you only need to outscore the other 7 catchers. And as catcher in particular, you could have nobody do anything. So then the lowest owned guy who doesn't project well could get to, you know, 8 fantasy points, and that might be enough for him. So I'm a little bit more willing in Fantasy Cruncher to mess with it. Of course, for hand builders, you don't have to mess with the projections, but you can factor that in. That maybe some of these catchers that you normally wouldn't want to play are a little bit more viable just because you're not expecting much from them to outscore the other 7 on the slate. All right, first base. Vlad Guerrero, top of the board here. CJ Cron, number 2. Brandon Belt. Is that Brandon Belt on Toronto? I missed that trade. Yeah, Brandon Belt is in Toronto. Interesting. That's he's going to see an uptick this year, isn't he? Okay. Brandon Belt up there. Wilmer Flores, Jake Berger, Jock Peterson. A lot of players across the top of the board at first base. Second base, Tyler Estrada. Oh, no, I got to sort here. Ryan McMahon, Whit Merrifield, Luis Garcia, Elvis Andrews, Christian Arroyo. Kind of even across the board here at second base. Again, we see Colorado and Washington among the top. Colorado, Washington, Toronto, the top 3 here. Is that the case at first base? Toronto, Colorado, Toronto. And then we're missing Washington all the way down here. Okay. Yeah, so those 3, there's a reason they're going to be chalky. They're often the best on the board. Tim Anderson. All right, Tim Anderson's up here. I got to sort again. Okay, Bo Bichette once again. Toronto up here. Bobby Witt up there. Interesting. Bobby Witt number 2. That is an interesting. So maybe another case to be made for allowing a batter versus your pitcher. Just because Kevin Gossman, clearly the top arm on the board. And then Bobby Witt up there. That's interesting to see Bobby Witt that high on the board for shortstops. Tim Anderson, number 3, looks good. Tovar, number 4. Javier Baez, Estrada, CJ Abrams. Rafael Devers, again, I kind of like that Boston stack today. Probably one that I'm going to be focusing on a little bit. Candelario, number 2. Got Colorado, Toronto up here. So we're Boston number 1, and then we got our Washington, Colorado, Toronto trio after Rafael Devers at third base. And then outfield is going to be top 3 instead of just the top score. So what we're looking at, Joey Meneses is number 1, Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon, Dalton Varsho, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously greater odds because you're just looking at top 3. So there's a look at the top batters tool. We can look at into building some lineups. So I'll go in and just build some stacks, and we can look at them and talk about which ones maybe look good. Unless any of you have any, why is it plus EV to stack hitters with their team's SP? Josh G asks. So I would say in general it is plus EV because if the stack goes off in general, it makes it more likely that the pitcher gets a win. I think that's the biggest reason. On most slates, it's just that's all it is. The pitcher, if you stack the pitcher with the batters do well. Pitcher likely to get a win. So you get some nice points for a win. So I think that is the biggest reason that it's plus EV to stack hitters with their team's starting pitcher in general. I'm trying to think if there's any other reason. I mean, there's some like, if the stack goes off, it makes it more likely. I'm trying to think if there's other reason. I mean, that's the biggest one. I'll just stick with that. If I have a little thought in the back of my head about, maybe opportunity cost here, but in general, I think it's just the fact that the pitcher is a little bit more likely to get the win. Do we have any other questions here? If you have questions for me, just at me. I'm usually, when I'm looking through chat, just scrolling for my name. If I see my name, I might answer. But yeah, just at me. And I'm not player Q on here. I am just my name, Neil Orfield. So if you have questions, feel free to at me here. Yeah, Stephen Lewis says Sale scares me, but the Tigers offense does not. Exactly. It's a tricky slate. It really is an interesting for a 4-game slate. There's a lot of kind of interesting aspects to it. All right, I'm going to just build out some lineups, and we can take a look at what some nice looking lineups look like here. All right, so I'm going to start with I got to change my columns here. And today I'm going to be not very restrictive on my pitchers. I'll just set it at 50%. So I'm going to crunch out a bunch of lineups. See what happens there. Bats, I'm going to be a little bit more restrictive because I think I might do some different types of stacks where maybe the one-offs come into play a little bit more. Who's our highest owned bat here? Okay, Lane Thomas. And who knows if he's even going to start. I'm sure he is probably going to lead off there. But yeah, we've got these Washington guys near the top. Bo Bichette in there. Nobody like 50% owned, which sometimes you'll see on a core slate, on a 4-game slate. Not that crazy of ownership. A little bit high owned, but not the end of the world there. Okay, and then I'm going to go in, and I'm just going to crunch out some stacks here just so we can look at some different lineups. Unique players per lineup on a 4-game slate. I'm actually just going to leave that at 1. Max hitters or pitcher. I think I'm going to go to 1 here. I think we're tomorrow. I don't know if tomorrow is actually live before lock or the strategy show, but I'm going to be interested to see if any pros are playing hitters against their pitchers. I don't think it's an interesting to look at, particularly on a 4-game slate. Like a 2-game slate, it's almost inevitable that you have to. 4-game slate, you certainly don't have to. I'm willing to, but I'll be interested to see what people are doing. I think it's an open question at the very least. All right, and then team stacks. All right, I'm going to start with some 5-3 stacks. All right. And we've got 8 teams on the slate. I'm just going to go straight to 13% for the 5-man stack to get me over that 100% threshold. You have to have at least 100% across your stacks. 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 100% across And then I'll allow a little bit more in the secondary stack here. I'll allow it to make me some nicer projected lineups. I'm not going to be too restrictive with my secondary stack. Almost want to do even more there, but I'm going to crunch out a bunch of lineups, so I think it's fine. All right, and then I'm going to crunch out 100 lineups. Okay, you guys, you took me up on it. You're now adding me. I appreciate it. The questions. Thoughts on Freeland as a SP2 in large field GPPs, Ryan asks. It's fine. Yeah, if Freeland, so let me take a look at Freeland as a, what's the price tag on Freeland? 7,300. He's not the cheapest pitcher on the board. Yeah, I guess I'd be fine with Freeland. I mean, he's been a Rockies pitcher for years now. He knows how to pitch in Coors Field just fine. And you only need to outscore 7 pitchers or, get into the same realm. So he doesn't even need to outscore like Kevin Gossman, who's more expensive, Lance Lynn, Alex Wood, doesn't need to outscore them necessarily to be up there. He's not my favorite pitcher on the board. He is pitching in Coors, but honestly, I don't hate it. 1% ownership in a large field GPP, especially if you're going chalky elsewhere. Yeah, Freeland definitely totally fine as a secondary pitcher, SP2 on DraftKings. All right, let me crunch some more questions and I'll come back and answer some questions, crunch some more lineups. All right, now I'm going to do I'm going to just change this to 5-2 stacks. On these kind of slates, I often do shorter stacks too, because I think for a couple of reasons. The biggest one being that, you don't necessarily have any teams that are going to be able to sustain 5 good fantasy scores today. So it just might be, overkill to go with a 5-man stack. But also, I think on a 4-game slate, you're a little bit more likely, like you do have to worry a little bit more about duplication. And the more you are stacked up, the more you're probably likely to run in some duplication. So I do have some concerns. I'm generally more inclined to go with shorter stacks on a slate like this, but I want to play around with it a little bit. I'm going to run some 4-4 stacks. Add those to the board. Here, I'll answer your questions. Okay. Do you mind not leaving money on the table in single entries on DraftKings for MLB? I don't do anything with my salary in MLB. I don't mind at all. If you use the full salary, that's totally fine. If you want to leave salary on the table for MLB, it's not something that I really factor in too much. 8-game. Who you got winning the Masters? I hope that it's Will Zalatoris. He's my highest exposed pitcher. I only played, or highest exposed golfer. I only played 20 golf lineups. I actually used the lineup generator, which I'm hesitant in sports that I have done well in the past. PGA is by far my worst sport. It's the only sport that I'm like massively negative. I have some sports, like actually I'm positive in hockey. I don't have that many, but it's the one sport that I've actually lost a lot of money. So trying out the lineup generator, maybe they can make me some good lineups. If you eat Coors Chalk, would you try and get different by going the 5-man stack and 3 naked? Yeah, I do think that that's very viable, Steven. I think that is a way that you could get unique for sure. So I do like the idea of playing a 5-man with 3 naked on a slate like this. All right, now I'm going to, but yeah, I have no idea who's going to win them. I don't watch golf. I don't really know anything about golf. I try to play it sometimes just using the numbers game, and I've maybe had a little bit of bad luck there too, but figure the lineup generator is free to me since I work here, so got to give it a shot. All right, now I'm going to try some 4-3 stacks, and then I'll do some 5-2, or sorry, 5-0. And then we'll take a look at just what some of these lineups look like. All right. So I've crunched out 500 lineups, different types of lineups throughout, and now I'm going to sort by projection. Gossman and Chris Sale in the highest. Interesting. So yeah, we see right away this is a core stack. We got 3 from the Rockies, 4 from the Nationals, and then Bo Bichette as a one-off, the 3 chalkiest teams. And you can see, my God, the ownership 346, 355 on these top ones. I guess that's kind of what you need to. You're going to have high ownership on a 4-game slate. Like it's hard to play really low-owned players here, but that's interesting to see. Charlie asks Neil, White Sox or Colorado? I mean, it kind of depends on the rest of your lineup to some extent. Colorado, clearly the higher projected play. They're the likelier to go off. I like the White Sox just as a low owned stack here. So I think I'm actually more inclined to go to the White Sox, but clearly Colorado does project better. So if you're really, if the rest of your lineup is not very chalky, you can just eat the chalk with Colorado. But I have some interest in playing some White Sox here. All right, the top projected again here. Let me take a look at how many lineups I'm actually playing here. And then maybe I will select those lineups as we go through. I did remember to reserve some lineups here. I know that after I failed to do so for NBA yesterday. All right, I'm just playing 25 lineups today. So I will choose 25 lineups that I like here. And we can talk about the lineups I'm looking at as I'm thinking about which ones to play. One second. All right, so I don't think I'm going to go to one of these highest projected lineups. I think these are going to be, they're just a little bit too high owned for me. And I think that the stack combos are going to be high owned as well. So I don't think I'm going to go to these at the top. Kind of want to just look at these at the White Sox stacks right away. But I'll scroll down a little. We can look at some of the top projected here. This one, hey, at least the full lineup, that is got a thing for me. When I see the yellow in there, I'm a little bit more hesitant to play it. You shouldn't be. I mean, we're going to get that lineup at some point. You can adjust at that point, but it is always something I'm like, man, what if we don't have a good $3,300 bet in that spot when we get that lineup? But I guess we do. We have the Rockies in the stack also, so not a huge concern. Yeah, looking at a lot of just different combos of Washington, Colorado, and the Blue Jays in these top lineups. Not a surprise they project extremely well. Also seeing a lot of, is it all Kevin Gausman and Chris Sale? Those are the pitchers making it into the highest projected lineups. Okay, finally we have a Lance Lynn lineup here. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit to try to find something a little bit more unique. I think these the highest projected are all kind of high owned here. Devers and Chris Sale. Got a full Colorado stack. Yeah, it's still. I can, I guess, just look at, all right, who's somebody. Luis Robert. Who do I want to have in these lineups? I'll go Luis Robert. All right, so just looking at my top Colorado projected lineups. Okay, he's a 1 off in this one, 2 off in this one. In the higher projected ones. Yeah, the ownership now down to around 300 in those ones at least. Okay, here's a 4-man White Sox stack. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Ryan McMahon is a 1-off. 1, 2, 5 from Washington with Chris Sale and Kevin Gausman. I don't mind that. I'll choose that one. Looks like a decent lineup. At least we're under 300 in terms of ownership. And it's a little bit more likely to be unique with it being this construction with the 4-3-1. Try that one out. Skipping bets, I kind of want to find some White Sox stack here rather than having them as a 1-off or 2-off. Again, we have the 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and then we have Washington 1, 2, 5, 7. A little similar to the other one. Probably not going to choose that. 3, 4, 7 stack. Wait, 2, 3, 4, 7 stack. Yeah. 2, 3, 4, 7. 1, 2, 5 from Washington. Bo Bichette as a 1-off. Lance Lynn in there with the stack. Yeah, I like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Washington. Yeah, skip over that. 1, 2, 3, 8 with Sebi Zavala. So we talked about Zavala does not project all that well. Probably not going to make it into a ton of stacks. Sort of interesting. It's again close because it's another White Sox and Washington stack. Just seeing a lot of those. I'll add it for now. I can always delete later. All right, here's my first. Here you can stack the Blue Jays with the White Sox here, but it's, let's see, 2-7-8, 2-3-7-8. So we got a gap 2 between them, the 9 and the 1 hole between the two different doubles, 2 different mini stacks within the Blue Jays. Interesting. And then 2-4 with Jerks and Profar as a one off. That's a little bit different. I'll go with that. Ownership down at 288. What do you guys think of these lineups? Am I doing too many that are a little bit too close together? What are we thinking about these? Yeah, I'll do FanDuel as well. That's a good idea. All right, I will maybe go do that now. You sort on Fantasy Cruncher on the shows. Is that how you normally do it? I know others sort in Excel. I just do use Fantasy Cruncher. I know that a lot of people do stuff in Excel after it, but yeah, I've always just sorted on Fantasy Cruncher. I find it easier to do it this way. I'm sure there's benefits, maybe a little bit more flexibility if you do use Excel, but yeah, I just do everything in Fantasy Cruncher. Yeah, Steven, I'm not. Steven's asked, on a small slate like this, are you setting anything on how much to leave on the table? I'm not, and it's not that small of a slate anyway. With 4 games, it's not like a 2-game slate, so I do have a little bit of concern with duplication, but it's not like a showdown slate where that's like a big focus of mine. So I'm not doing anything as far as salary goes. All right, let me choose just a couple more lineups here, and then I'll jump in. I guess I'm sorted here by Luis Robert. What other stacks should I try to make? Are there any other stacks you guys want me to look at, like particular teams that you think you want to see stacks of? I said Dodo again. What did I say? Yeah, Earl Peptice wants to look at FanDuel. I will look at FanDuel in a second. Oh, let's look at some of these. Well, let's look at some White Sox stacks, or some Red Sox stacks. Man, Devers super high owned here. Let's go to look at some Yoshida stacks. Oops. 2-4-6-7 Red Sox with Washington one-offs, or Washington secondary stack. 2-9-4-6. Don't love either of those. 2-4-6-7 with Bo Bichette and Profar, Bryant, Elias Diaz. That's kind of interesting. It's going to be a little bit, down at 266 actually with the Red Sox in there. Christian Arroyo just 4% ownership. That's interesting. Yeah, this little combo here, Casas and Arroyo, 1.9 and 4% ownership next to each other in the order. That's kind of interesting. All right, we got a full Red Sox stack here. 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. Okay. Bo Bichette with Lane Thomas, Joey Meneses. Sure, sign me up for that. Sox and Jays. 1, 2, 4, 6. 1, 3, 5, 7. Sale and Gossman. Can I play this? Yeah, I can, because they're different games. So it's just only players from 2 teams in this one, but they are different games. Give that a shot. We'll jump into some FanDuel here in a second. Unless, do you guys have any specific stacks you want me to look at? Rockies and Toronto, please. Okay. Let's look at, you want to see the combo? Rockies and Toronto. All right, first of all, let's look at some Vlad Guerrero lineups. Here you get both Rockies and Toronto, one of the higher projected lineups here with Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero, Dalton Varsho. I like that 1, 2, 3 right in a row. And then for the Rockies, 2, 5, 6, 7. So the 2 kind of an outlier, but he is Chris Bryant, and then 5, 6, 7. That's kind of an interesting lineup. Could add that one. It is using full salary. My guess is that this is actually going to be a duped lineup, especially with this high of ownership. So it is. I have concerns there. It looks like a really nice lineup though, with the 1, 2, 3 for Toronto, and then 5, 6, 7 for Colorado, plus Chris Bryant. Two, 5, 6, 9. Vlad is a one-off. All right, let's see. What other Blue Jays lineups look good here? 1, 2, 3, 4 Blue Jays, and then 1, 2, 5, 7 for Washington here. Going to get some ownership, 341%, fairly high own there. Here's another, you get a 2-man Blue Jays, the 2, 3, and then Colorado, 2, 5, 6, 7, 9. Plus Joey Meneses is a one-off. Lance Lynn in there. I don't mind that lineup. It's harder on a day like today because the ownership is just so high. Like in any lineup I look at has a pretty significant ownership. Here's another full stack of 1, 2, 3 Blue Jays plus 1, 3, 5, 6, 7. That's interesting for Colorado. Chris Sale, Kevin Gossman, still looking at some chalky pitchers there. All right, so this was looking at the Blue Jays. Let's look at some Rockies lineups. Chris Bryant seems to be in just about all of them. Let's see if we can find any that are lower owned here. Anything below 300%. Nothing coming up yet. 307. Okay, 298. Here's our lowest own towards the top of the projections. 1, 2, 4, 6, 9 for Colorado. So it's not the best, not my favorite way of stacking. Not very sequential there at all. And then a bunch of one-offs in Dalton Varsho, Luis Garcia, Rafael Devers, Chris Sale, and Kevin Gossman still in there at pitcher. That one looks fine. 294 here. Actually, 294 with the Rockies and Blue Jays stack to get ownership down to 294 is kind of interesting. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 for the Rockies. 1, 2, 5 for the Blue Jays. Alex Wood in there. Okay, that's it's because Alex Wood has such low ownership. That's part of it. All of these ownerships, it's like, well, yeah, you got two 60% owned pitchers. You're going to have high ownership. So just putting Alex Wood in there is kind of interesting. Maybe I'll try an Alex Wood lineup there. 289 over here. So there are ways to stack this up. All right, now let's look at FanDuel. What's this one? 285 with some Red Sox with the Blue Jays and Chris Bryant. Try that one. Also, some concern that's going to be duped. Let's take a look at FanDuel, though. So the top pitchers tool, maybe I should refresh here before we look at it. Rerun for president is how much does a favorable or not favorable pitching matchup affect a batter's points projection? Pretty significantly, because that's a favorable matchup for batters. That's going to affect the Vegas line, which is then going to affect projections. So yeah, it's definitely a pretty significant impact on the projection when bats have a good favorable matchup. Yes, FanDuel I will look at now. Okay, top pitchers tool on FanDuel. Kevin Gossman, again, number one. On FanDuel, you often see that the top pitchers go in way high owned, as you see here with Kevin Gossman. Still 19% chance of being the top pitcher on the board. Probably some safety there. Again, I'm willing to eat some chalk at pitcher. I don't really care as much about the negative leverage in the top pitchers tool here. So I'm willing to eat some Kevin Gossman even at 35% ownership. Lance Lynn looks pretty good. Chris Sale, you can save some money on those two. Still 29% ownership, 14.5% chance of being the top pitcher. Yeah, Josiah Gray. I struggle. Josiah Gray. He is, decent strikeout pitcher. So if he is just throwing fire today, getting some strikeouts, he could doesn't need to even put up a huge fantasy score to be the best of these 8 or the best point per dollar of these 8. Sort of interesting, and of course, all the leverage against Colorado. Little bit of interest there, but man, he's not a strong pitcher in general. Jordan Lyles, such a tough matchup. Like I think I'd rather face the Rockies in Colorado than Toronto and Kansas City if I were a pitcher. I mean, I'd get crushed by either of them, so it doesn't really matter. But if I were a good pitcher, I think that would be my preference. Spencer Turnbull against Boston, a little bit of an unknown. Kind of interesting there. At 7,500, Spencer Turnbull, it's a tough matchup, obviously, but 1% ownership, that's a little bit interesting to me. And Kyle Freeland, I almost think I'd be more inclined to go there on DraftKings than FanDuel due to the pricing for one thing, and just because I don't really see him putting up a great raw score. So to be your only pitcher, I don't know. It's maybe that doesn't matter as much. Alex Wood against the White Sox again. You know, I mentioned I have more interest in the White Sox as a result of his ground ball tendencies and with the rules changes, but also I think Alex Wood is a strong enough pitcher that you can always consider Alex Wood at 5% ownership on FanDuel, 13% chance to be in the top pitcher. Kind of interesting there too. But yeah, in general, Kevin Gausman is going to be your safest option by far, also has the highest upside. Chris Sale, Lance Lynn, both look pretty good as well. I think those are your strongest pivots here. I don't know how much I want to go to these other pitchers, but if they allow you to get to lineups that you like, I'm willing to take some shots. All right, let's look at the top stacks tool. By the way, again, reminder, we do have this 9 for $9 deal that does expire tomorrow. So you're going to need to, if you want to take advantage where you can see all of these tools, use them yourself. Days like today, you can obviously just look at it with me because we have lock is in 20 minutes. So you're welcome. You can see it all as I'm showing you, but on most slates, it's going to be a night slate and you're not going to be able to, I'll maybe look at it earlier in the day and you can see it there, but it changes throughout the day. So if you want access to this yourself, you're going to need to take advantage of our deal. Again, it is PLAYBALL is the promo code, or you can just use the link in the description to get your first 9 days of these tools for just $9. I think I just saw a super chat, so let me check that out. Oh, no problem. Thank you, Rerun for President, for the super chat. Appreciate it. All right, top batters tool. Yeah, again, we see the Coors Field bats looking the best here. 25% chance of being the top stack for Colorado, 20% for Washington. Those are going to be your top, and then of course Toronto, just your best offense on the board here. Those are your top three. Once again, not a surprise. And then the ownership is going to be there as well. Those are the three that have high ownership. There's actually a huge gap between these three, 19% for Toronto, and then more than a 10% gap until, I guess not, we get the White Sox sneak in there, but basically a 10% gap between the top three and then the next on the board. So big gap there. So if you want to get contrarian, again, I think the White Sox, I might take some shots against Alex Wood being a ground ball pitcher. You don't get any kind of leverage there. You can get some leverage if you do play Detroit against Chris Sale. Again, Chris Sale being a little bit of an unknown. It's a little bit interesting to me to take some shots on Detroit against Chris Sale on a 4-game slate where we're projecting Detroit for 4.6% ownership with Chris Sale being a volatile pitcher. I mean, he's probably good. He's probably at least better than Detroit, but I think I'm willing to take some shots there on a slate like this. Maybe in, I sometimes debate whether if you're going to a Detroit stack, do you want to do a full, I guess we're looking at, did I move to FanDuel? Yes, I did. Okay. I might be more inclined with bats that I don't fully trust, stacks that I don't fully trust are going to be low owned. I might be a little bit more inclined to go to a shorter stack on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, 4-man stack already a little bit shorter. So you can consider going to like a 3-3 stacks and working in some of these like Detroit. Yeah, I go back and forth on whether I want to fully stack, but generally I think I'd be more inclined to go to shorter stacks with the lineups that are a lot less likely to put up big scores. Like Colorado, Washington, Toronto could put up 10 runs here. If you are, betting on Detroit, you're probably hoping that they put up 7 runs and that just none of these other higher owned stacks pan out. It is kind of what you're hoping for if you play Detroit against Chris Sale. But so then I'm thinking, well, maybe you don't want the full stack on DraftKings with the 5-man stack. Maybe it can't support a full 5-man, but the 4-man will do well. These are the kinds of things I'm thinking about on a shorter slate. Do I want to go to 4-man, 3-man primary stacks if I'm playing teams like Detroit? But so Colorado, Washington, Toronto, best on the board. Boston looks pretty good against Spencer Turnbull. I do have interest there. Boston, 7.6% ownership. 12% chance to be in the top stack. They're maybe my favorite stack. If I were going to do a single entry, I might consider Boston my single entry team. You could just work them in as a secondary stack behind one of these, but I might consider Boston as my primary stack and then have some one-offs or another short stack behind them. San Francisco against Lance Lynn. Yeah, it's a tough matchup, but he does give up some power. 6.6% ownership for the stack, 8.8% chance of being the top stack. I consider some San Francisco. Again, we went over why I kind of like the White Sox today. Detroit, interesting because of Chris Sale. And then Kansas City. That's the toughest stack for me to get to against Kevin Gossman, but it's a 4-game slate. You can still get there. And then top batters tool for FanDuel. So you don't have to play a catcher on FanDuel. There's a catcher / first base spot. Joey Meneses, number 1 in terms of odds of putting up the top fantasy score at the position. Vlad Guerrero, number 2. CJ Chrome, Elias Diaz, Wilmer Flores. It drops down pretty quickly, and then it's flat down here. But yeah, Joey Meneses, the clear number. Well, I guess Vlad is right there too. Got kind of these 3 in a tier of their own: Vlad, CJ Chrome, Joey Meneses, and then a little bit of a drop off down to Elias Diaz. At second base, Ryan McMahon, Javier Baez. Actually, it's fairly even up. I mean, we get down here, Hanser Alberto a little bit low, but yeah, again, it's Colorado at the top, Washington, Toronto, 3 of the top 4, and then Javier Baez sneaking in there. Second base, shortstop, Tim Anderson, number 1, Jurickson Profar, Bo Bichette, Baez once again. Third base, again, Colorado, 2 of the top 3, Toronto up there, Washington up there, but then we get Rafael Devers sneaking in there against Spencer Turnbull. And Chris Bryant, I mean, there's a reason he was getting into all of my lineups. Projects really well, pretty likely to have success against Josiah Gray. So Chris Bryant looks great. Charlie Blackmon up there, Lane Thomas, Dalton Varsho, Jurickson Profar going down a little bit higher numbers on the outfield because it's just top 3. What is this? I don't know if I'll have to mess with my settings a little bit so I can make these columns a little bit bigger. Maybe I need to make my font smaller or something. I don't know, but a little bit hard to read right here. And then, yeah, looking at all of them together. Highest on the board, Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon. Highest odds of being the best of their position. We have any other questions here that I'm missing? I think we're good. Ryan Nelson, Neil, are you going to grind the smaller sites now that you are playing less volume on DraftKings? Yes, if I have time. It's all a matter of time. I do enjoy some of the smaller sites. I enjoy like doing the daily drafts on Underdog. I think are really interesting because I think the field is not nearly as sharp there. Like you don't get people 150 maxing typically. Like the pros in DFS are not spending the time to 150 max like the drafts on Underdog. So I do like that. I do enjoy some of these prop sites when I have time. It's tough because I'm doing DFS content all day, and then I sometimes just forget to enter some of those. But I do think there's bigger edge in some of those sites than there is in DFS. So I do like the idea of playing some of those smaller sites. Nick, are you nuts to 5-man Kansas City? No, it's a 4-game slate. They don't even need to do that great to do to be the top scorer on the slate necessarily. I mean, there's a pretty good chance on this slate that we see some big scores, but not necessarily on a 4-game slate. It's pretty easy for Coors to fail. Just end up a 5-3 game where there's just one home run, and everybody who played Coors is disappointed. So you don't need that much to fail for a Kansas City stack to work out. The downside is it is, of course, the toughest matchup on the board. They're pretty unlikely to put up a huge score, but again, you just need to outscore the other stacks here, and it's more likely on a 4-game slate. So no, I don't think that you are crazy. Sorry, Ricky, I didn't mean to tell people underdog. Disregard what I just said about underdog. And then, yeah, so we have, I mentioned the deal that we have going on with Bet365. Again, you definitely want to check that out. You can turn $1 into $200 right away in free bets. Once again, that is only for people in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia. But if you live in one of those states, it's as good of a deal as you're going to find anywhere. You just bet $1. All you have to put at risk is $1. You will get $200 in bonus bets when you deposit and place a bet. And just use the link in the description. Great deal going on there from Bet365. I should note the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But yeah, just a fantastic deal there from Bet365. If you live in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia, link is in the description. You guys want to take a look at BetPro real quick? We only have 10 minutes until lock. If you have any more DFS questions, happy to answer them. But we do have MLB BetPro now, which is pretty awesome. I should refresh this, but it updates as the books update. You can find the best bets on the board with MLB BetPro. And these are, of course, using our projections, which are handled by Alex Baker, Steve Buzzards, Sean Zahn, some of the best DFS players of all time are handling the projections for this. So easy way to find some great bets. Highly recommend signing up for BetPro. Do we have some kind of offer? I think we have an offer. Yeah, you can get a seven-day free trial for new users on MLB BetPro. So make sure you check that out. After that, it's going to be $30 a week or $100 a month. But you can get your first 7 days free. Check it out. Link is in the description. It's a fantastic program we got there. And here's a quick look at our BetPro offer. You can see exactly the expected EV, how often you expect the bet to win, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you check it out. And then we can take a look at some FanDuel lineups if you guys want to. Actually, how many have I selected here? Let me create an empty crunch real quick. I don't think I selected that many. All right, move 11 over to crunch 2. I'll export those and at least have some lineups. And then I can adjust after lock. I see now that I have Kevin Gossman in every single one of those lineups that I made, which honestly on a 4-game slate, I don't care that much. I think that's fine. All right, 1 second. Okay, now I at least have lineups in there. Obviously not the process that I would do if I were not on a show right now, but still getting used to this doing a solo show thing. It's going to take some getting used to, which is why I'm not playing huge volume. All right, tools. All right, here. Once again, willing to eat some chocolate pitcher. Got to sort by the game. I think exposure at 50%. Bats, I'll set the exposure at 30%. And we'll just run some lineups here. Start with some, I don't think I'm going to run any 4-4 stacks just yet. Maybe I'll run some 4-3s. Did that not work? No. All right, I'm going to crunch out 100. I'll just crunch out 150 for 3 lineups. Not as many different combos you need to do on FanDuel. Add in some, maybe just some 4-2 lineups. Yeah. I'm going to try some 3-3 lineups. All right, and we'll have 500. Take a look at some lineups. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to sort by projection here. Any particular types of stacks you guys want to see here? Any particular teams you want to look at for FanDuel? Because again, at the top is just going to be a bunch of the combos of these 3 teams, I imagine. Thank you for the heads up, Patrick Lawrence. 8 minutes. Yeah, I got some lineups in. I just I'm duping myself right now, so I'm gonna have to change after lock, but I'm just accepting that. Dario, are we all about to input this Neil lineup? Please don't everybody input my lineup. That's yeah. I'm just trying to show you like types of lineups that I like here, not like specific lineups. If you do, if you're duping me, it's negative EV immediately. The biggest thing you can do to hurt any kind of EV you have is to dupe other lineups. So in general, I would, if you're playing my contest, which is just the 20 max on DraftKings, I'm not even playing FanDuel today, so you won't be duping me. But if multiple of you are playing these lineups, not helping yourself there. All right, so no specific requests for types of lineups. Here's so right away we get Washington with Colorado. We do have Jake Berger as a one-off here at 14% owned. Let's look at, wait, did I sort by? I sorted by projection. Yes, I did. So here we still have super high ownership on these high-end stacks, 288%, 289%, 303 here with the full-on core stack with Gossman. Do we have any other interest? I kind of want to look at some White Sox stacks here. So I want to look at some Tim Anderson lineups. Again, I'm not actually playing on FanDuel, so I don't even need to worry about this, but 1-2-4 White Sox stack with the 1-2-5-7 Colorado stack. Joey Meneses is a one-off. Kevin Gossman there. 1-2-4. I want to look at some Red Sox lineups here too. 1-2-4 from the White Sox. 4-5-6. That's kind of interesting. It's 1-4-5-6 from Colorado here. With the 1-2-4 from the White Sox, Lane Thomas is a one-off. It's a little bit interesting. 1-2-4. Just so many combos of these teams. Even in my White Sox stacks, I'm seeing so many combos of Washington. But here we get 1-2-3-4 from the White Sox plus 127 from Washington. And then Ryan McMahon is a one-off. Lance Lynn is the pitcher here. So you lose a lot of ownership just by going down to Lance Lynn. With Vlad as a one-off, and then 1, 2, 3, 5 from Colorado, 1, 2, 4 from the White Sox. I kind of like this lineup. Clearly, nobody's all that low owned, but you get a little bit lower ownership on some of these White Sox guys. It is using the full salary cap. Some risk there of duping, but interesting enough. Yeah, Ryan, I am telling you, please don't dupe me. Don't dupe me. Yeah, it's hard not to on a 4-game slate, admittedly. We got the lineup. Hopefully it'll refresh here any minute. All right, so who do we have in the, let me look at my Nats. See if it's any different than we were projecting here. So I'll look at some. So we got Lane Thomas, number 1, as projected. Joey Meneses. Oh, wow. So Meneses is down in the 4, which I don't think is going to change his projection all that much from the 2. Probably slightly at least. Call in left field. Who is Call? Alex Call. Okay, we have Call here. Okay, good. All right, we can refresh and take a look. So do I have anybody in my lineups who's not actually in the lineup? Thomas Meneses, Call, Garcia, Candelario, Ruiz, Robles, Abrams, Dominic Smith. Yeah, so I think a little bit out of order, but it's at least the same players that we were projecting for the starting lineup. So not any kind of huge change that we need to make there. I see on Twitter, Brandon Douglas says, think I'm fading that game completely since both offenses suck. Totally viable to completely fade Coors, to be honest. I'm sure it wouldn't surprise me if there are even some 150 maxers who completely fade Coors. I mean, it's the best, obviously the best hitting park in baseball, but they are bad offenses. So there is certainly a possibility that game just completely duds and half the field is dead. No Stone Garrett. Did we have Stone Garrett in? Let me see my okay. Did I get to any Stone Garrett in my lineups? Not in the ones that I actually played. What about the other stack? No, we didn't have Stone Garrett in the lineup, so don't need to adjust there. Yeah, I hear you. DFix says horrible pitchers at Coors is just too much to fade. That's the other side of it, is bad pitchers in Coors Field. It's a tough game environment to want to fade, but obviously the field is going to be there. Patrick says Giants have had 17 walked in 2 games so far against the White Sox. Lance Lynn looks sketchy. Yeah. Lance Lynn could give up some home runs, could give up some walks. A little bit sketchy. I mean, you can get really different on a 4-game slate. It's I'm not usually sticking to the usual construction of like full stacks and nobody against the pitcher. On a 4-game slate, I'm a little bit more inclined to get a little bit different. Obviously, still played a lot of, I mean, as we saw, even on a 2-game slate, we saw major stacking by most pros. But you can, in some lineups at least, get away from the biggest stacks. At least you're going to want to stack some even on a smaller slate, but you don't necessarily need to go a full out like 5-3-4-4 type stacks. Should I have considered this one? Should I have played this Royals lineup? I mean, it's tough. It's the toughest spot, but 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pretty low ownership there. Maybe more inclined to go to this really low owned Tiger stack. Yeah, interesting. Well, we have reached lock for the first slate. No overlay plus smaller contests on smaller DFS sites. Yeah, exactly. The smaller sites, you do often find overlay too. It's pretty nice. So who did you guys play? Did you just stick with the cores? You guys play some of these weirder stacks with me? Do you play some White Sox and hope that they get on base and steal some bases? Am I the only one? Who just got an eagle? Boston ownership is heavy on FanDuel. Ah, man, that was the stack that I said I want to play because we didn't have them projected for a ton of ownership there. Yeah, we had the stack as a whole at least. We didn't necessarily have individual bats low owned though. So maybe people just played a lot of one-offs from Boston. We had some ownership on Devers, Yoshida. I guess most of these guys we had at single digits. How chalky did they end up being on FanDuel? Dang gang played way too many Detroit and KC puke stacks. I don't mind it. You didn't stack your main lineup, Josh. That's it's tough. So I'm always inclined to stack at least some rather than playing one-offs. It's just so hard to hit that parlay of like getting 8 different one-offs all right. So unlikely. We did I think last night, right? That was at the Ardent Aardvark one with just like a completely one-off lineups. It can work, obviously, and on a 4-game slate, maybe more viable than most slates. But I'm still usually inclined to stack at least some, just because it's so hard to get all of those different combos right with the one-offs. What's the ownership look like on Devers at 23%? Okay, that's on FanDuel. Yeah, not that far off. Kind of anticipated he would get some ownership there. How are they looking on DraftKings though? You guys planning on playing the night slate? I know there is a later slate here too. Chris Sale, 24% on FanDuel. What do we have him at? Yeah, we had him at 29%. So he's actually a little bit lower owned than we anticipated. Still would have been a little bit over owned relative to top pitcher odds, but interesting. All right, let me sort by ownership here. Chris Sale, 45% on DraftKings. Rafael Devers, 25%. Verdugo, 16.5%. Yoshida, 15%. Duvall, 14%. Javi Baez, all the way down at 13% on DraftKings. Kind of interesting. And there's a little bit of gap after. I guess we got Eric Haas in there at 12%, and then all the way down to Matt Vierling at 8.6%. Justin Turner, only 8%. I'd say no like enormous surprises there. Spencer Turnbull, only 3% on DraftKings. What do we have him at here? 1%. Okay, so more than we were anticipating. Dario says, anyone who went Turnbull is a dirty, dirty little boy. Yeah, dirty play. No, he's at that ownership, he's an interesting play. I'd say I like both sides of it. I'd say a Scumdacker special, Slumdacker special. I always forget Scumdacker special. I like both sides. You can play in different lineups, Boston or Turnbull. Yeah, he's already got 2 outs. I mean, no strikeouts in those 2 outs, so like it's fine. Spencer Torkelson. $4%. Yeah. See, that's the kind of play that is more interesting to me on a small slate, where I might be a little bit more inclined to up his projections. Did I get to in my crunches of my 500 crunch? How much did I get there? All right, so I got to 4%. So, you know, a little bit above what we were projecting him at, right around where he ended up being. But I am sometimes you will crunch out and like you'll get players who you get zero, even in a 150 set, you get 0% of a player, even on a short slate. And that's when I'm a little bit willing to adjust projections because they don't, on a 4-game slate, again, you don't need to outscore all that many different players at your position, which I didn't go through here and adjust anybody's projections or anything, but this would be a slate where I may have been more inclined to if I wasn't doing a show. Devers out. Okay. Do you want to take I think we got another show coming up in 45 minutes. I'll just go quickly. We can take a look at the tools for the late slate if we have. Do I have access to it? Yeah. DK top pitchers tool, DK night slate. I haven't even looked at what's happening on the night slate, so did not, I just prepared for the live before lock show with the main slate. But if you guys want to take a quick peek at these tools for the night slate, here's what's going on there. Is this it's just a 3-gamer? We have 2 games here. So what's going on here? What am I missing here? DK Knight, Cleveland, LA. Oh, we got Colorado in there. Maybe this is not updated yet. Okay, so we can't take a look at the tools for tonight's slate. Am I right? Yeah. Okay, it's not updated. Spencer Strider, obviously going to be probably the pitcher that most people are going to get to, but against San Diego, that's tough. Dustin May against Arizona looks interesting. Yeah, this is it's going to be kind of interesting slate. You can make a case for any of those pitchers. Blake Snell against strikeout prone Atlanta. Yeah, Ryan, I'm not gonna do a process talk all day. It's a fun. It's pretty easy to do this kind of format. Of course, I have not eaten anything, so probably go eat lunch in a minute here. What else do we have on let me take a look at our schedule for today, because I know we've got a hockey show coming up. I think that's what's coming up in 40 minutes. I think we've got the NHL strategy show. So for those of you who want to play some NHL today, make sure you check out our NHL strategy show. Let me see what else we have. I know we've got NBA Deeper Dive live before lock coming on later. We've got the Odd Shop at 4 Eastern over on the Odd Shopper channel. You'll want to check that out if you're going to do some sports betting today. Let me see if we have anything else that I'm missing here. Is Will Zalatoris winning yet? That's what I need the most. All right, so we've got the hockey NHL show coming up at 2 Eastern, followed by the Odd Shop over on the Odd Shopper channel. It starts at 4 Eastern. That's going to be with we got the NHL show with Josh Harris, Michael Clifford. Then we got Laffy and Ben Rossa coming on the Odd Shop show at 4 Eastern. I'm sure that'll be entertaining. Ben can talk some how the golf is going so far. And then, of course, NBA Deeper Dive live before lock. You got Laffy and Adam coming up at 5 Eastern. And then me and Greg will be there for the 6 Eastern live before lock show. So that's what we've got left on this channel. If nobody else has any questions or anything, we can move on, start sweating all the sports we have going on today. We got day baseball, we got day golf. What a fun day to be playing some DFS. And then, of course, we've got, okay. And then, of course, we have, I was just informed that that NBA Live Before Lock tonight is going to be an hour and a half. We had it scheduled for an hour, but apparently that was a mistake. So I will see you tonight for an hour and a half on NBA Live Before Lock. Anything going on yet? Anything? Okay. I am going to close up shop here. Chris Sale, already getting crushed by the Tigers. Congrats to the Tigers. That's a joke. He's given up one walk. All right. Good enough. I'm going to call it for the day. Make sure you check out the NHL show in 40 minutes. Check out the Odd Shop after that on the Odd Shopper channel. And then, of course, we have NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock, which will go for half an hour after lock as well. So check that out. 6 straight balls for sale. Man, not a great start. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you for watching. Please do, again, I always forget to say this during the middle of the show. Please do like the video if you haven't already. Always very helpful to us. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. But once again, thank you guys for joining me for another very long broadcast for a 4-game slate. Hope one of us can take something down today on this 4-game slate. But good luck. Catch you guys later.